Hi everyone. So this is the first part of a two-part lecture on Housing Development Control and Licensing Act 1966. HDA, which is Housing Development Act 1966, is also known as Act 118. Yeah, 118. You can see there the full name is in the bracket control and licensing. So controlling who, licensing who. These are all answers that we are questions that we are going to answer in this particular lecture. But I just want to direct your attention lah, to make you aware that the name of the akta is Akta Pemajuan in BM. Akta Pemajuan Perumahan, Kawalan dan Pelesenan 1966. So it's not Akta Pembangunan Perumahan. It is Akta Pemajuan Perumahan. Okay, development is translated as pemajuan rather than pembangunan for this particular act punya title. Now, so this is an introduction. This lecture will serve as introduction, okay, to the HDA, whereby we are going to discuss on the housing development process in Malaysia. We are going to learn about the actors, the who falls, what kind of developers fall under the jaring tu, under the control of HDA. And also we want to also expose you guys to housing issues, issues in the housing industry in Malaysia, yang mana memerlukan the issues that require intervention by the government in the form of HDA. Okay. That's why HDA too, first of all, it was established 1966, and then later on the Act HDA was amended a few times to strengthen the provisions under the HDA, and also to give more power lah, to strengthen and also to improve on the implementation of HDA. Before we begin, this is what I want you to do. I want you to scan the QR code as proof of lecture viewing. So maknanya besides the attendance that you mark, on Monday, hopefully this will be a proof that you actually watched this video that I will put up on YouTube. Then, okay, this slide shows you the outcomes that I hope all the students will obtain from this particular lecture. So at the end of this lecture, you should be able to explain, first of all, the actors involved in the housing development process in Malaysia. Actors tu maknanya siapa? Actors tu all the players, the stakeholders. In particular, because the process that we are concerned about is housing development process. So house buyers tu tak termasuk lah sebagai actors. So now we are talking about the players or the actors involved in the process of producing the housing units in Malaysia. The second one is, okay, you should be able to explain the housing development process in Malaysia. Third one is you should be able to three stages. Nanti pay attention to the three stages of development process, which is also related to housing development. Okay, and then finally the legal framework controlling housing development in Malaysia. We want to pecahkan. We want to detail out. Okay, how the control over housing is implemented in Malaysia. Maknanya how one law is related to another law, which law is higher than the other law. So we want to establish that, the legal framework itu. Then, okay, introduction. Okay, just an overview, just a warm up for you guys. In introduction about the housing industry now, or in the recent years that necessitates ataupun require, that gives the need to have legislation yang control, yang mengawal, that control specifically housing development. Okay, first of all, you should be aware, and I hope you are now aware of this fact. Yeah, the demand for housing in Malaysia has been high. lately, not lately, since I think late 1980s, early 1990s. Masa tu kita punya country, the country, our country moved from the sector, agricultural sector, to industrial punya nation. So being an industrialized economy, there were more jobs in big cities, and therefore, people from the rural areas came to the urban areas, causing the demand for housing to rise. Not just that, due to due to not only due to the rural urban migration, as Malaysia became more and more prosperous. Okay, uh, in the major cities, people also settle down to seek better economic punya opportunities and better life opportunities. Economic opportunities, in the sense that, um, if you have a degree, and then if you compare the income, if you income obtained from working in the major cities compared to a smaller town, you will get higher income, kan? In the major cities. Not just that, there are more business opportunities in major cities because of the fact that there are more population, higher number of population in big cities in Malaysia. Penang, turun bawah nanti you have Penang, Ipoh, then you have KL, and then you have Klang, you have PJ, you have Seremban, you have apa nama tu, JB in the West Coast, then so on so forth lah. People came here to get better economic opportunities in terms of employment, in terms of businesses. Not only that, the major government punya offices are located in big cities, especially KL lah. Then apa hospitals are located in KL. IJN, for instance, the Institute Jantung Negara kan, located where? In KL, Putrajaya lah now. Cancer, the cancer center, apa nama cancer center dekat Putrajaya kan. So big city, better life opportunities, not only for health but also for education. So that's why people came to the big cities rather than stay in the smaller towns lah. That was a big pull punya factor for these people to come and live in the major cities in Malaysia. Again, resulting in a higher housing demand. Okay. Not only that, we also have government policies that have been consistent in promoting home ownership, for instance. Kan, dia promote home ownership. Dia apa nama bagi support. Dia come up with what you call it, with schemes such as My First Home, ataupun lagi Prima, kan? Apa lagi, My Deposit dulu. My Deposit ada satu government scheme whereby they help the house purchasers to come up with deposit, the 10% deposit. So a few schemes lah yang government came up with through home ownership friendly policy lah. Which the government, before the National Housing Policy 2010, sebelum itu ada dimasukkan dalam the various Malaysia plans. So after that, with the what do you call it, with the introduction ataupun with the with the introduction of National Housing Policy 2010, baru ada satu set of government punya policy yang specifically mentions about housing dalam satu document. If not before, you want to have a look at government policies regarding housing in Malaysia, you have to look in so many places. Not only Malaysia Plan, you kena tengok juga dalam structure plan, kena tengok National Physical Plan dan sebagainya. So with the introduction, or with the launch of National Housing Policy 2010, and then later on 2018, dah ada the second National Housing Policy sekarang, Dasar Perumahan Negara. Apa nama tu? That means that there is a need for the housing development industry in Malaysia to be controlled in order to promote adequate housing, affordable housing, quality housing. So those are just talking about the units, the housing units. What about the neighborhood yang mana housing units tu terletak kan. So at the same time, not only the individual housing unit needs to be conducive for living, the neighborhood, the area outside the house also needs to be conducive as well, good living environment as well. So all these factors, the apa nama tu, the rural urban migration, which is, urbanization. You've learned this before. Urbanization plus home ownership friendly government policies. And not only that, ada juga another factor, which was the ease of credit, the ease of housing purchases to obtain housing loans before. So sekarang ni sudah ada tightening up lah, due to the what do you call it, the ease of getting housing home loans dulu. At one time, people even got 110% of the house price, for instance, kan, as the housing loan tu, 10% tu untuk dia renovate, to buy furniture, whatnot lah. So that's why at one time it was so high, even 110% of the purchase price diberikan oleh bank, but now no more lah. Now sudah di-reduce, sudah ada tightening up, sudah ada, what do you call it, apa nama tu, more stringent requirements before you can obtain housing loans. One of which is the requirement that your credit report is clean lah. Credit report you bagus melalui CTOS, melalui CRIS kan, CRIS tu, barulah you boleh obtain housing loan. Okay. But all these factors kan, they contribute kepada what we call the housing development punya environment lah, housing development punya ecosystem lah di Malaysia. So ini semua background dia, konteks dia, yang menyebabkan adanya a good apa nama tu, housing industry in Malaysia. Semua tu promote what do you call it, promote home ownership in Malaysia. If we compare in other countries, tak semua governments they support home ownership. In countries such as Germany, for instance, the government favors renting, private renting, rather than giving support kepada private home ownership. So in Germany, you have the rate of home ownership there about 40, 50, 60%. Dia berlainan. Every year ada apa nama tu, ada studies that were done to gauge ataupun to evaluate the rate of home ownership Germany. Kadang-kadang 40%, kadang-kadang 50 something, 60, but the range is 40 to 60% lah. Compare that with Malaysia. At one time it was so high, I think a report came up, katanya 90%. Sampai sekarang kita pegang 90%, but another report said about 80. So 80 to 90%. So this figure is similar to other countries in Southeast Asia, such as Singapore. Sangat tinggi dia punya home ownership punya rate, because of the fact that the government fully supports home ownership for various different reasons than Malaysia. Okay, nanti later on, if you have time, we find out why the government of Singapore supports home ownership. Dia punya reason why the government supports tu lain. Malaysia punya reason why government supports home ownership is different from why Singaporean government supports home ownership in their country. Sangat interesting. If you want to know, PM me lah. I have the answer. Now, we go to the issues, some of the issues lah. So just now was some context about our housing industry in Malaysia. So talking about issues in Malaysian housing development, okay, I outline these factors, these what are the problems or issues ni, which I extracted from Sufyan and Sapian. So this particular paper was published in 2019, about 12 years ago. Okay, so 12 years katanya long time ago kan. But some of these issues are still prevalent, you can still find the problems that I mentioned here. The bullet points in the first one, developers absconding with house buyers deposits. Apa maksud abscond tu? Abscond means to run away, melarikan, menggelapkan. The developers, they are entitled to collect 10% deposit from the total purchase price lah, from house buyers. So what happens when they got the 10% deposit? Katakan it's they are selling 200 units of apartment, for instance kan, price at 300,000. So mereka boleh kutip 30,000 each lah daripada 200 units tu ataupun 200 house buyers. So time that lah. Bukankah banyak? Isn't it a lot of money? 10% of 200 units at 300,000, banyak kan? How many millions is that? So some of the bad developers, unscrupulous developers, rogue developers, apa yang dibuat, when once they obtain the 10%, the deposit, they ran away, or they took the money and didn't start the construction on site. So maknanya dia larikan aja lah. So what did the house buyers get? They get nothing. They don't they lose their 10% deposit, and also they don't have any house. What happens to the to the housing site? Sometimes some of the developers, they started construction, but once they got so much money, they ran away and they just left the development sites, construction site, leading to the second problem, abandoned projects. They abandoned projects. So now, abandoned projects, if I ask you for a definition, of course, you say that projects yang tak siap, kan? The uncompleted housing projects, meaning being left, just like that. And you can imagine half constructed buildings, mungkin just the flooring dah siap, or floor plus walls dah siap, roof dah siap, but no windows, no doors, and things like that. Abandoned projects. Okay. The effect, or the what you call the negative repercussion, the negative impact on the house buyer, housing purchasers too, is very, very significant. Because one, mungkin katakan bangunan the project has been 70% completed. So after the 10% deposit tu, the bank, now there are two contracts. One is the house purchaser punya contract with the housing developer, which is also known as sale and purchase agreement, SPA or SNP. Okay, that's the first contract. The second contract is the contract between the house purchaser, house buyer, with the bank. Contract dia apa? Contract dia the bank. Dia punya agreement adalah bank akan bagi housing loan. Bank will give you the 90% of the purchase price as housing loan. You as the house buyer, your responsibility is to pay later on the what you call it, the housing installments, the loan installments, that will be set by the bank lah, depending on the rates of interest. So bank pula the 90%, how do they pay the developers? They will pay according to the progress of the project. So maknanya dah siap lantai, nanti they will add 5% more or 10% of the purchase price. They will pay to the developer. So it is known as progress payment for the section, or for the stage of the completion of the housing project. So akan release the payment stage by stage lah, and it will be certified by QS lah, our friend yang belajar dekat QS tu. What they do is they are the ones who will certify that the project is 15% completed. So 15% tu dekat stage mana? So bank will have to pay the developer the 15%. So that's how the banks disburse the 90% purchase price yang house buyers borrow from the banks. Okay. So now, like I said earlier, there are two contracts. The first one is a purchase agreement, the contract between the house buyer and also the developer. The second contract is between the house buyer and also the bank. Kan? So in the case of abandoned projects, do the house buyers have to pay for the installments, even though the house buyers do not get the finished product? Rumah yang dah siap tu perlu bayar ke tak? Yes. The contract between the house buyers and the bank is still standing, masih ada, masih valid, masih ada, masih standing. So ada obligation. There is an obligation on the side or on the part of the house buyer to pay the monthly installment. If 35 years, 35 years lah. If 20 years, 20 years lah. 1,500 per month for 25 years. You have to pay the installment per the agreement between yourself, the house buyer, and also the bank. Kalau tak, bank boleh cari you lah, boleh sue you, dan ambil tindakan lah, biasanya lelong dan sebagainya. Or kalau tak cukup duit tu, nanti you can be declared bankrupt. We don't want that. That will be bad for yourself. Okay. Then the third issue is low quality of newly completed housing. Rumah dah siap, developers manage to complete the housing scheme, but the finished product, whatever the developer has promised you in the sale and purchase agreement. So if you can imagine in the sale and purchase agreement, which is essentially the contract between yourself and the developer akan promise you, okay, look, you beli rumah yang tak siap lagi, yang on paper saja. Okay, ada 200 units, you are buying unit number 10. Okay, so this housing unit, okay, katakan landed property terrace house, double story. Okay, the what you call the dimension, the land area is 20 by 70, for instance. You will get a double story terrace house, and then flooring finishes, mungkin ceramic tiles. Okay, then apa nama tu, kitchen with cabinets, so on. Everything is mentioned in the sale and purchase agreement SMP. Okay, so we can say that the SMP contains specifications that have been agreed by both parties, the developer and also the house buyers. Okay, sometimes when you get the finished product, which is a house unit, you do not get exactly the specifications mentioned in the SMP. Contoh, dulu in the SMP it mentioned that the windows are of aluminium casing. Mahal tu aluminium casing dengan glass panel. Suddenly you get apa? You boleh dapat glass louvs yang murah tu, tingkap nako, glass louvs yang sangat murah tu, or you even get timber frame. Timber frame cepat berkarat, cepat reput kan. So lower price, lower quality than aluminium punya frame. So meaning tak dapat apa yang kita nak, or cracks, or plastering yang tak elok, or beams, the horizontal punya beams tu yang crooked, yang bengkok, crooked, or columns yang crooked. So many problems with newly completed housing. Okay. Also, I mentioned just now specifications tu yang the aluminium casing punya window tu, that was an example for the fourth one, construction that does not follow promised specifications. They promise you apa nama tu, Italian tiles, for instance, but you get a normal cheap ceramic tiles kan. So itu semua the finished product that does not follow promised specifications. Not just that, sometimes the building dimension promise you 20 by 70, you get a 20 by 65 punya rumah kan. Lebih kecil daripada apa yang mentioned in the same purchase agreement. Okay, construction that does not follow promised specifications. Then another common issue before was late delivery of vacant possession. Okay, the sale and purchase agreement that I mentioned to you just now, there are two schedules, dua jadual yang terkandung dalam that are contained in the Housing Development Act at the back. Bila kat belakang tu, you akan jumpa jadual, tables. Okay, so jadual, okay, berkenaan dengan sale and purchase agreement, the schedules related to sale and purchase agreement are known as Schedule G for landed properties and Schedule H for strata properties. So if you buy an apartment daripada developer, okay, you will sign a Schedule H, jadual H. If you buy, for instance, a typical or a conventional terrace house kan, single story terrace house, you will be signing Schedule G. Okay, but bear in mind, sometimes sekarang ni there are some terrace houses that are being offered on strata scheme. You tak own the land that your house is on. You cuma own the building. Ada, especially dah ada konsep townhouse dan sebagainya. But strata terrace, biasa, it's normal now. We call those kinds, those houses or that particular type of housing as horizontal strata. Horizontal sebab dia tak tinggi. Kalau vertical strata is normal kan. You look at my back, kat belakang tu, the apartments yang tinggi-tinggi tu, the condo tu kan, service, itu tinggi lah. Itu high rise. Itu vertical strata, normal. But we have nowadays what we call belakang tu vertical strata. Nowadays we have horizontal strata. Dia low rise, dia double story terrace, for instance, yang mana you will only own the building, not the land. Okay, so back to my point, late delivery of vacant possession. So in Schedule H, it will promise that upon the signing of the sale and purchase agreement, you will get the unit, or you will get your house within 24 months for landed properties. Ini schedule G. In schedule H, kalau katakan you beli apartment, you will be promised that upon signing the sale and purchase agreement, you will get the delivery of vacant possession of your apartment within 36 months time. Delivery of vacant possession equals serah kunci. Serah kunci makna you boleh masuk rumah tu lah. You dah dapat unit. So the proper term for serah kunci is delivery of vacant possession, or in Malay, penyerahan atau serahan milikan kosong. Tapi bahasa layman atau bahasa biasa ialah serah kunci, ambil kunci, sebab you dah nak masuk rumah lah. Okay, so in some cases, okay, there will be delays in construction for whatever reason. We don't want to know about the causes of the delays, but sometimes they promise you in the according to the sale and purchase agreement, schedule G, 24 months, you cuma dapat kunci pada 36 months, after 36 months. Okay, for apartment, promise you after 36 months of the signing of the sale purchase agreement, you only got it 4 years later, 48 months kan. So what happens to the extra 12 months tu, for the landed just now, the extra lambat lewat tu, the delay of 12 months, what happens then? So the any breach of the conditions in any contract perlu dibayar penalty. Same lah in this particular case. If there is any late delivery, maknanya sudah breach the contract, mesti ada penalty kepada developer. In this case, the penalty is known as LAD, liquidated assessed damages. You will learn about this later on. So don't worry about it. Just for your knowledge lah, I want to expose you to this information first. So if the developer is late in what they call in perfecting kita in giving the vacant possession, in delivering the vacant possession, developer will have to pay the penalty in the form of liquidated assessed damages, LAD. Dikira hari ke hari. Kan, that's a lot, because it's the rate is I think 8% day to day based on purchase price as the basis. So quite a lot. So imagine the 12 months delay just now. Berapa the house purchaser, the house buyer will get out of the late delivery. And why such penalty? Kenapa dikenakan penalty tersebut? Is because, okay, in the case of late delivery, the purchaser sudah kena bayar kepada the housing installment, the installment of housing loan. The house buyer has must already pay to the bank, pada masa tu. Bila bayar, and at the same time tak dapat rumah, they have to pay for their rent. Kan, dia rent, kita assume dia rent rumah. So housing cost dah double. You bayar dia punya monthly installment, at the same time you have to pay for the rent. So the housing cost has double. So kenalah claim balik, claim lah. Kena punish lah kan, the developer for breaching the conditions in the contract, in the sale purchase agreement. Schedule G and Schedule H is also known as statutory. Statutory sale and purchase. Statutory sebab dia lahir dari statute. Dia lahir dari HDA, Housing Development Act. So Schedule G, Schedule H are sale and purchase agreement yang standard. Developer cannot touch. All the provisions in Schedule G and Schedule H are standard clauses, klausa kan you belajar, klausa standard contract. Developers tak boleh ubah dia punya klausa-klausa tu, cuma letakkan details baru lah in the Schedule G and also Schedule H. More on Schedule G and H later on, okay, next week, I think so. Then, okay, yeah ke? Or is it next semester? Maybe we can explore this during tutorial. Anyway, non-issuance of certificate of fitness for occupation. So last time, any new buildings, okay, must be certified safe or fit for human habitation before people can move in. So I'm just talking about housing, housing punya development, not talking about other types of development. Itu lain cerita. We are now focusing on housing development. Okay, so the house buyers, before moving into their house, they must first of all obtain the certificate that states rumah ini selamat, rumah ini boleh diduduki, layak untuk diduduki, fit for habitation lah. And last time the certification system for new buildings are under the CFO, the Certificate of Fitness for Occupation, CFO. Okay, CF lah. Dulu pernah dengar kan CF, but since 2007 no longer, we don't have CF anymore. For current developments, okay, newly completed housing units ataupun newly completed units, tak kisahlah, newly completed property units, tak kisah residential ke, commercial ke, industrial ke, all these new units will be issued with CCC, Certificate of Completion and Compliance. Masih ada certificate, but the names are different and the systems are different. Who issues the certificates are different as well. CFO was issued by the local authority. CCC is issued by the PSP, the Principal Submitting Person. Who is the PSP? Nanti later on, when you learn about building law, okay, PSP ialah architects, engineers, draftsmen, yang submit the plan, yang submit the building plan to OSC tu. Building plan untuk apa? Untuk kelulusan lah. So they were the ones yang design the development. Okay. So last time we go back to the problem here, the non-issuance of CFO. What happens then? Bangunan tu dah siap, tak ada sijil kelayakan menduduki. Boleh tak duduk? Bangunan tu sebenarnya selamat. Cuma tak ada sijil aja. So some of the, most of the people, I'm not saying some. Banyak orang masa tu, they just move into the new house without the CFO, okay? Because the houses have just been completed. Nampak strong, nampak sturdy, nampak safe kan? So dia masuklah, tak ada masalah. Certificate is just a piece of paper. But there were other complications, other problems. Kalau masuk ke rumah tanpa CFO, once people move in, what do? They move into their new house. What do? They start all this renovation, extension dan sebagainya, which causes the building to be different. The building to have a different building plan compared to the submitted building plan. So the as is drawing, kita panggil as is punya building plan selepas renovation, selepas extension tu, selepas dah ketuk dinding, semua besarkan bilik dan sebagainya kan. So different from the original building plan submitted for kelulusan. I'm still talking about CFO, but now the current system does not follow the CFO punya system anymore. But I just want you to focus on this one. CFO the last time, the previous system, okay, people move in without being issued the CFO. They renovated the house, the building plan, we call it as is punya drawing, as is built drawing tu. So that different from the submitted plan. Therefore, local authority, when they came to certify the house, to check lah whether it's the same as the submitted plan, tengok ada lain. So how could the local authorities issue CFO? Bila dah nak tengok there were different specifications now, atau different measurements between the submitted plans and also the actual plans. Satu. And then due to the fact that there were so many developments that the local authority have to handle kan. Sebab banyak masa tu diorang pun staff tak cukup. Not enough, insufficient staff, manpower at the local authorities. That's why lah ada backlog. Maknanya lambat lewat at the local authority punya side. So non-issuance of CFO ada effect. No CFO, no fire insurance. No fire insurance, especially for strata property, itu ada satu requirement for banks to cover. Cover pula untuk bagi housing loan, diperlukan the fire insurance certificate sebelum dia boleh bagi housing loan kepada you. So itulah, dia akan check, dia dah bagi housing loan sebenarnya, but they need the CF and also fire insurance certificate tu sebagai proof lah, sebagai dia punya part of documentation, because the banks want to control lah, want to protect lah the properties that are charged. Go back to your lesson before lah, you buat a loan to a bank, apa jadi sekarang? Charge akan dimasukkan, betul tak? atas your title. So now as the chargee, bank tu sebagai chargee, they want to protect the property tu. Protect in what sense? Mestilah ada fire insurance. If anything happens to the property, at least there is insurance cover that can, be claimed by the bank. So without CFO, no fire insurance, bank pun nanti akan susah hatilah, akan pressure the buyer. So those were the problems before. Okay, some of the issues with the Malaysian housing development, from developers absconding with deposits yang 10% tadi until lah the non-issuance of CFO. So banyak issue dahulu. So the one that is no longer relevant, I would say the last one, non-issuance of CFO, because the current system is no longer the local authority who issues the CFO, the certificate, but it is the PSP. So PSP works for the developer. Selalunya the what you call the professionals, the PSP tu dia akan make sure bangunan siap, then dia akan certify lah bangunan tu dah siap dan patuh. Ada perakuan, kesiapan dan penyiapan dan pematuhan tu dah siap. Perakuan, pematuhan dan penyiapan equals Certificate of Completion and Compliance. So who issues CCC is the PSP. Who issues the CFO is the local authority. So out of these 6 issues, it's only the last one that is no longer relevant sekarang. The rest, I would say masih ada until now, the problems there. Now, before moving on, okay, we need to define property development. Okay, property development. So that we can somewhat link apa yang you belajar di sini with other subjects, yeah, in this year. Now, property development, according to Wilkinson and Reed, 2008, katanya a process that involves changing or intensifying the use of land to produce buildings for occupation. Okay, it's a process. So mana-mana proses, it will take a long time. Dia tak terus siap a process. Maknanya it takes a long time. Different actors or different people involving many activities. The process that involves changing, menukar or intensifying ataupun menambah the use of land. Changing or intensifying. So changing in the sense, changing of the use of land, okay, in terms of development is, you go back to what you learned before, highest and best use. If the land now is under a use which is not the highest and best use, you need to change. You need to convert the category of land use to the highest and best use of the land. So if the surrounding properties, if you have a parcel of vacant land or development land, the surrounding properties are under residential, what is the highest and best use? You do market study, you tengok, oh, perlu lagi housing demand is quite strong in that area. So you convert your land from agri to building under the category of residential. Or after you conduct a market study, the initial punya market study, you dapati bahawa, okay, enough housing in the area, not enough shops or shop houses, shop office in the area. So what you do is, you change from agri to building under commercial use. Okay, intensifying means at the same time you check with zoning, with planning punya requirements. I see the plot ratio. Sama ada boleh bina tinggi lagi. What's the maximum plot ratio in that area? Of course, sebab you nak the highest and best use. Okay, to produce buildings for occupation. Occupation here boleh menjadi living, for living, boleh menjadi for working, dan sebagainya. For leisure, untuk diduduki lah, duduki. Okay. Okay, so based on the above definition of property development, okay, we can now discuss the characteristics of property development. Okay, first of all, when we say that, the property development is a process involved with intensifying or changing the use of land, of course, it will be complex. Of course, it will be time consuming, a process which is complex and also time consuming. And okay, going back to the basics, what are the inputs needed for property development? Okay, inputs are land, labor, materials, and finance. Okay, another thing that is missing there is it could be entrepreneurship. kan, keusahawanan, entrepreneurship, which is a skill lah. Not all developers have entrepreneurial skills or entrepreneurship areas, entrepreneurship entrepreneurship skills. Ada developer yang such as government developers, okay, because they are not profit motivated, okay, sometimes they can due to the fact that profit is not the main motivator. Okay, sometimes the product is not innovative enough. Delays in completing the development and things like that, due to the lack of innovation and lack of entrepreneurship on the part of the developer. Output of property development is change of land use. If you go to the first one, to changing the use of land, could be a change of land use, okay, and or a new or altered building. Then property development also can be done on existing development. Okay, for instance, the development is that particular development, katakan apartment development sudah experience urban decay, for instance, kan, a lot of um, dirty, a lot of things breaking down there. So meaning that it is now time to redevelop that particular development. So means sekarang sudah ada, the property development can come up with a new or an altered building. Setengah building you cannot touch some of the features or some of the parts of the building. For instance, heritage buildings, bangunan warisan. Maybe there are some restrictions atau limitations of what you can do with the heritage building. Maybe you cannot touch the facade. Fasad tu permukaan depan, dia punya bahagian depan fasad. You can only add things at the back. Sudah ada alteration di situ. But it is still known as property development. Okay, so that is the definition of property development, okay, and also the characteristics of property development. Now we go to the actors in the housing development process. We say before, involves a lot of actors, kan, a number of actors, including these people, developers, professionals, and also at controlling the overall property development, okay, is the Ministry of Housing, Urban Wellbeing and Local Government. Urban Wellbeing is a new portfolio added to the ministry. Dulu, it was known as, previously it was known as Ministry of Housing and Local Government. So now another portfolio has been added to the ministry. Nama penuhnya, the full name is Ministry of Housing, Urban Wellbeing and Local Government. In Malay, it's known as Kementerian Perumahan, Kesejahteraan Bandar dan Kerajaan Tempatan. Long, right? Quite a mouthful. So sekarang ni the old name of the Ministry of Housing tu lagi famous. We always hear KPKT. Itulah, KPKT was the old name of the Ministry of Housing, Urban Wellbeing and Local Government. Urban Wellbeing was only added lately, a few years back. So before this, it was MHLG, Ministry of Housing and Local Government. Then another actor is the Local Planning Authority. Planners dekat local authority, they are known as the Local Planning Authority. Penting ni, our friend the URP punya students, Urban and Regional Planning students. Later on, they will work in the private sector and also at in the public sector. So one of the places that they can go and work at is the local authority, and they will become the local planning authority. Orang yang meluluskan, yang ada kuasa untuk meluluskan that particular project melalui planning permission. Okay, planning permission. Then another actor is the one-stop center. One-stop center is a jabatan, is a department at the local authority, OSC. State authority also has a role to play in housing development. And finally, technical agencies. And we shall go and have a look one by one, the roles of these different actors. Housing developers. Okay, first of all, there are two main housing developers in Malaysia. Okay, the main ones lah, main. Ada lagi yang kecil, ada lagi other types, but we are talking about the main housing developer types in Malaysia, the government sector and the private sector, the government developer and private developers. Okay, so The government developers normally they develop public housing. The one below ni, public housing, perumahan rakyat. PPR, transit housing, Prima is provided by the government developers. Commercial housing, or otherwise known as market housing, conventional housing, itu semua commercial housing, comprising the main housing supply in Malaysia, is provided mainly by private developers. The main ones, the big ones that we always hear, IOI, Sunway, Gamuda, Sime Darby, kan, all these big punya private developers, they are the main providers of housing supply in Malaysia. But depending on the locality juga, if you go to Johor, is another developer that is the big developer there. For instance, they had the developers from China, building houses or developing there with local partner lah. So maknanya they just set up a local punya company, okay, with local partners. So they come in and then they develop for a city, for instance, kan, in Johor. Okay, so depends juga. So you go to another state in Malaysia, Kelantan. You pergi Kelantan, who is the major housing developer there? Lain pula cerita dia. So each state in Malaysia has their own what we call structure of housing provision. Dia punya players tu lain. Players tu bergantung kepada, depends on the local laws, kan. Land law in Kelantan, for instance, is a bit different from the other states in Malaysia. Outsiders cannot purchase land in Kelantan, for instance, kan. So dah lain lah dia punya sistem kat situ. Law dah lain, of course the housing provision system pun dah lain, ataupun the structure of housing provision pun lain. The developers involved pun lain. Okay, mungkin anak syarikat kajian Kelantan ke, I'm not very sure, sebab tak ada orang buat kajian lagi lah, siapa what the individual housing provision structures in each state in Malaysia. So that could be a good research topic lah sebenarnya untuk thesis. Anyway, it says there, before 1990s, housing cooperatives actively develop and sells houses for their members. So there was another player before the 1990s. Housing cooperatives ataupun kooperasi lah, sebenarnya gerakan kooperasi, the cooperatives movement in Malaysia. Okay, it gained momentum, or it started in the early 1900s lah, macam tu kalau tak silap, 1920s macam tu. Started to be established in Malaysia, and it was well received because the main objective of cooperatives was to help their members. Members beli saham they purchase shares in the cooperative, they become members, and then they enjoy certain benefits lah. So for housing cooperatives, what they do is they use the money that they collect from their members. Okay, they purchase a piece of land. Okay, and after that they will develop with housing schemes. So kita ada taman koperasi tu kan. So developed by whom? By housing cooperatives. At one time sangat-sangat aktif before the 1990s. Dia ada taman koperasi guru, taman koperasi QPEX apa kan, dekat KL ni. And the good thing about housing cooperatives is the previously lah, initially, they sold the houses at below market price, 20 to 30% cheaper. Okay, quite a lot, isn't it? Because why? Because the intention of the housing cooperative is to help their members, bukan untuk dapatkan profit. Initially, sebelum satu masa dahulu, in the 1960s, 50s, 70s, 80s, itu betul. Their main intention was to help their members. Dia ada satu principle, which is volunteerism. So semua orang tu nak gotong royong, tolong menolong, bantu membantu in cooperatives. Remember your koperasi sekolah kan, housing school cooperative is the same punya concept. You pergi koperasi sekolah beli pensel 10 sen ke 20 sen. I'm not very sure you have it now or not. My time ada, you go to koperasi sekolah, you can buy things cheaper. Sebab dia nak tolong members kan, which is students lah. So housing cooperatives nak tolong dia punya members. So in this particular case, house buyers. Okay, but housing cooperatives were hampered by issues lah on their own. Dia ada isu-isu dalaman management yang tak cekap, for instance, because as we said earlier, it's based on volunteerism or volunteers. Kadang-kadang at the management position, the board members are people without any training in business. Not even business. Janganlah cakap real estate. Business pun tak ada training. Maybe contoh, maybe retired soldiers, retired colonels, retired general tak adalah. The retired punya major ke apalah from the army kan. Ataupun contoh-contoh lain, cikgu lah, guru kan, headmaster ke, running a property development company, tak macam tak kan, you can see the problem there, they had no expertise. So that's why the housing cooperatives punya what you call it, punya mode of provision ataupun cara supply rumah tak berapa menjadi, not really took off in Malaysia. 1990s dah, we can say there's 5 or 6 macam tu yang aktif sekarang, tak banyak. Still there, but the main motivation or the main what do you call it, the main objective of these cooperatives is now profit juga. Sudah profit motivation, not really to help their members. Dia ada profit punya aim or objective to achieve when they develop housing schemes. Now, these private housing developers, they have their own society lah, kita kata persatuan, their own society, their own organisation, which is the Real Estate and Housing Developers Association, REHDA. Okay, you have heard, I'm very sure you have come across REHDA, but you haven't come across, I know lah, you haven't come across and HBA, House Buyers Association of Malaysia. House Buyers Association though is opposite REHDA. REHDA is an organisation or is a society for the developers. HBA is a society or an organisation for the House Buyers of Malaysia, National House Buyers of Malaysia. Okay. Apa nama tu? So on one hand we have REHDA, which comprises housing developers, very rich, very powerful. On the other hand, we have the HBA. HBA tu volunteer run, volunteer basis. Sekjen, the Secretary General is Datuk Michael Chang, lawyer. So lawyers yang nak tolong house buyers in case of any disputes ataupun any problems ataupun any unfairness from the developers, you go to HBA lah, House Buyer Association. You can have a look at their website or their Facebook. Their website is being revamped by your seniors sebagai community engagement project dia, which is good lah. So we'll see later on what these two people have done to the website of the HBA. Anyway, it says that according to Housing Development Act 1966, housing developers who build more than 4 units of houses simultaneously must be licensed. HDA, Housing Development Act, was not enacted to capture atau to control all housing developers. Kalau dia nak capture semua housing developers, terlalu ramai lah housing developers, sebab ada small scale punya developers yang develop 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units. Maybe one after the other, or 4 simultaneously, 3 simultaneously. Mungkin rumah detached lah. I'm not talking about terrace. Terrace mana orang buat 4 units kan. But anyway, this small scale ataupun small scale developers, that's not the intention of the HDA to control them, sebab mereka tu tak melibatkan ramai house buyers. Okay, so the HDA, Housing Development Act, dia punya scope, dia punya jaring, dia punya net tu is only to capture those developers who develop 5, 6, 7, 8, 100, 1,000, 5,000 units simultaneously. So beginning with number 5, 5 units simultaneously and above, secara serentak. So if the developer builds 4 units, dah siap another 4 units, dah siap another 4 units, tempat yang lain-lain lah, tak dikira sebagai housing developer who needs to get obtain the license from Ministry of Meteorology tadi, the KPKT. Tak perlu dapatkan license. 4 unit sekali serentak, siap. Then go to another place, 4 unit serentak, siap. Then itu tak perlu dapatkan license. Now, why is license so important? It's through licensing that the behavior, that the activities, that the perbuatan of the developers can be controlled. Sebab license can be passed, can be approved together with conditions. Remember what you learned before, licensing of prescribed premises, kan? So the licenses, the pollution license lah, so-called pollution license tu diletak sekali dengan conditions to control the activities lah. So same in this case, okay, the activities of the licensed developers can be controlled. So that is why it's so important that medium to large scale developers be controlled with license requirement. Because under license nanti ada conditions, ada syarat-syarat yang wajib dipatuhi oleh the developers. Kalau dia langgar syarat, boleh tarik balik the license. So that is something that the developers don't want to happen to them. Their license being revoked. Dia nak license tu hidup selalu macam you lah, motor ataupun naik kereta kan. You want your license to be selalu what do you call it, selalu efektif lah. Tak nak lah dia mati kan. Then, okay, says there in Malaysia, we adopt sell then build system. I hope you have heard of this before. Sell then build. That's what I said earlier. You only buy a unit on paper. Unit rumah tu tak siap lagi selalunya lah. You go to shopping complex in any place in Malaysia lah, the large scale shopping complex. Nanti you boleh nampak developers opening their booth, trying to attract house buyers kan. Rumah tu dah siap belum? Apartments tu dah siap belum? Terrace house tu dah siap belum? Not yet. They are only selling the development that has been approved by the ministry on paper. Tak siap lagi, dah approve. Dia boleh tunjuk, okay, lot ini free, lot ini available, these are the lots available, these have been taken, do you want it? Okay, so that's how they sell. Of course, for landed properties, for instance, you can go and visit their what do you call it, apa dipanggil tu, rumah contoh dia lah. You can go and have a look at their rumah contoh, have a look. Rumah contoh English apa? You can have a look at their rumah contoh, see the specifications, see the dimensions, if you like it or not. But not really with apartments lah, with strata. Selalu strata tu tak siap lagi kan. You cuma beli, you tengok tapak saja. Not yet, because they need to collect enough deposit lah before they can, and they obtain their bridging finance before the developer can build the strata, the vertical strata, the high rise or medium rise. Okay, sell then build. It's a 10-90 system. 10 means the 10% deposit you pay upfront. Then later on, the 90% being released by the bank through the progress, the certification of the progress, completion of progress, the certification of progress of the project. Stage berapa dah siap? Okay, foundation sudah siap. What percent? 5%. Walls, okay, further 10% will be released gradually or staggered to the developer. So again, who certifies that that particular stage has been completed is your friend, QS, the quantity surveyors. Okay. So all of your friends at the Faculty of Built Environment, all these people, they have their own roles to play in housing development. Okay. So we are still implementing sell then build system, but the government is pushing for build and sell. Rumah dah siap baru jual. So this is the model being practiced in other countries. For instance, in Australia. For instance, in mana lagi tapi tempat itu Hong Kong. For instance, I think so. Hong Kong siap dulu baru jual. Siap dulu baru jual. Sell, build then sell. Okay. One argument against build and sell is dia katanya rumah yang under build and sell will be more expensive compared to the sell and build. So itu argument lah. Argument siapa? Biasanya developers. Because what they want to do is they want to obtain enough money upfront dulu, reduce their loans tu. Kan dia nak tahu, dia nak test bahawa ada buyers dulu, baru dia develop the land lah. Itulah sebenarnya reason dia why the developers prefer sell than build. Because the risk for them is lower compared to the build and sell. Now, go to the next punya actor in housing development, professionals. More important role since 2007, because now since 2007 they are in charge of building certification. New completion, the completion of new buildings, the certification of these new buildings is done by the PSP, principal submitting persons, which are which come under three occupations: architects, okay, engineers, and draftsmen. Okay, draftsmen. So see there, all these professionals just now, professionals, termasuklah PSP just now, ada professionals lain besides the PSP. They are being controlled by their professional acts. Architects, they have their Architects Act. Engineers, they have their Registration of Engineers Act. Valuers, we have our Valuers, Appraisers, Estate Agents, and Property Managers Act. Okay, 1981. You must add another profession here: valuers, appraisers, estate agents, and property managers. So VAEP, property managers. And planners are being controlled by Town Planners Act 1995. Okay, somebody else, QS, they have their own act as well. Okay. Now, Ministry of the next sector is the Ministry of Urban Wellbeing, of Housing, Urban Wellbeing, and Local Government tadi tu, the KPKT. So this ministry controls activities of licensed housing developers. Termasuk macam mana? Termasuklah they impose the conditions in license, in the developer's license, which the developers of 5 or more units yang nak develop simultaneously tu perlu obtained from the ministry. So in the license will be imposed conditions that the developers must obey ataupun must observe. Okay, tak boleh langgar, dia kena pastikan syarat tu dipatuhi. The second one, they control the activities of licensed housing developers through checking audited accounts. All these things nanti we will learn in more detail next week. Yeah. So first of all, impose conditions in license, checking the audited accounts, checking the progress reports. Okay. So audited accounts tu just to make sure that the monies in, monies out are being used for the correct purpose. Bukan nak beli Mercedes for the developer. Being used for the housing project itself, untuk pay the labours, for instance, untuk pay for the materials, for instance, untuk pay for any development charges, for instance, kan? Not for personal use, not being misused by the developer. Checks progress report, the physical development on site, whether there is progress on site or whether construction works have stopped on site for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, or whatever. So we will learn later. Okay, progress reports is a requirement. Progress report is a requirement under Section 7 of HDA. But next week kita akan belajar ni. What is required? Dia kena tunjuk proof that ada activity on the site, on the construction site. Then what happens to errant developers? Developers yang buat salah tu mesti didakwa. So this is the responsibility of the ministry, melalui dia akan mendakwa the errant developers. They bring the errant developers to court. Okay, and finally, another way to control the housing developers is to establish house buyers claims tribunal. So means that if the house buyers, they don't receive the units that they have been promised according to the specifications in the sale purchase agreement, the house purchasers or house buyers will have an avenue, ada satu jalan untuk claim from the developer. So ada cara lah, without having to go to court, because court, going to court can be expensive, going to court can be time consuming, going to court can be daunting. Dia menakutkan tau, because you know, judge kat depan, of course it will be daunting to go to the court rather than going to tribunal. Tribunal ni quasi court, dia separa saja. Dia separa mahkamah. Dia formal but not that formal. Tiada judge, there's no judge. Dia cuma ada dia cuma ada pegawai lah kat depan tu. Ada arbiter. Arbiter namanya. Sebab dia bukan full court. Now, Local Planning Authority says there under Section 19 of Town and Country Planning Act 1976. Town and Country Planning Act 1976 is also known as Act 172. Yeah? A very important section under TCPA is the Section 19, which states that any proposed development on land needs approval from planners before its undertaking. Planners here refers to Local Planning Authority. Your friend dekat UP tu, bila dia dah keluar UM, some of them will work in local authorities. Dia kerja majlis Bandar Ampang, Ampang ke DBKL ke. These people will approve your application kalau you kerja dengan developer. Okay. This approval is known as planning permission. Kebenaran merancang. And application for planning permission approval is made to the Local Planning Authority. Again, Local Planning Authority is located within the local authority. Okay. And the main document for planning permission, macam mana cara nak submit tu? Submission is made through a document, the main document which is known as the Development Proposal Report, the laporan cadangan pemajuan. Go and have a look. You can either Google this online, or if you have any friends, normally second year dia dah buat laporan cadangan pemajuan. Macam you all lah buat valuation report, that level lah, but at least you will know what are the items required in LCP. Okay. Planners, Local Planning Authority again, continue. Okay, planners' decision, how do they make their decision whether to approve the planning permission or approve with conditions ataupun outright reject the planning permission? How do they make their decisions? Their decision is guided by development plan. Dia akan merujuk kepada rancangan pemajuan, development plan. Okay, says that Section 22 sub 4 under TCPA, no development shall contravene any provision of the development plan. Mesti mematuhi, mesti ikut apa isi kandungan development plan. Cannot be, a new approved development cannot go against apa yang telah dirancang. Kalau tak gunalah dia merancang kan. Section 6 sub 1 sub A of TCPA states that local planning authorities' powers include inter alia. Inter alia means among others. Maknanya the powers of the local planning authority is much more than this, but these are just the powers related to our lecture. Now, regulate, to control, to plan the development and to the use of all lands and buildings within its area. Its area to its local authority area. Local authority dia ada dia punya own boundary. So any area outside the boundary of the local authority is not covered under the development plan. Development plan tu terbahagi kepada NPP, National Physical Plan. Okay. Then you have, itu untuk Malaysia, and then you have the at the state level you have the structure plan. At the local level you have the local plan. But again, within the local authority area ada certain what we call certain pockets, certain tempat, certain areas, small pockets yang memerlukan special attention. Okay, these pockets of areas can be can be planned using special area plans. Contohnya sebab dia ada nilai warisan yang tinggi kawasan tu, so the developers can come up with a special area plan bertujuan untuk preserve the heritage value of that particular area. Contoh. Okay, so development plans to be prepared and used by local planning authority include all those plans that I mentioned before. And TCPA 1976 introduced development plan system. Okay, whereby consideration is given not just to physical. Kalau kita kata property development to involves physical punya development, not just that. The planners will also look at the social issues, economic issues, environmental issues before they make their decision on the proposed development. So dia punya consideration tu is bigger than just highest and best use dah tercapai, zoning dah fulfill, plot ratio dah fulfill. No, they will look again, adakah the new development tu, housing development in this case, memberikan sebarang impact dari segi social, economic and environment. Dia akan tengok tu balik. Okay. Now, these three issues kan, social, economy, environment, don't they remind you of something that we learned before? Kan? Ini semua dimensions of sustainable development. So if these are the dimensions of sustainable development, remember the three-legged stool of sustainable development, meaning the planners are very close to sustainable, to ensuring development is sustainable within the local authority area. So orang yang memastikan sustainable development is achieved are planners. Are we involved? Are we responsible to ensure sustainable development as well? Yes. Are we involved? Yes. Kita responsible, kita pun involved nanti. Some of you will work with developers. Some of the developers in Malaysia now have already incorporated green features in their developments dan menang various awards lah. Green awards, ada yang buat passive punya architecture, passive design yang save electricity for instance, yang gunakan what do you call the natural lighting for instance kan, maximize tu. So nanti ada yang kerja developer. So who enables the developments to be carried out melalui bridging loan just now? Valuers, sebab valuers buat residual method of valuation ataupun buat DCF untuk show the viability or feasibility of the project. Valuers pun ada role untuk pastikan the green project itu ataupun the sustainable, the projects that support sustainable development itu berjalan. Okay, valuers, siapa yang pastikan the development project tu dijual kepada orang, our estate agents kan. So semua ada role to play in sustainable development. Now, OSC, One Stop Center. So since 2007, all applications for development matters are through One Stop Centers, OSC. Located where? Located at the local authority. And their role is as a secretariat for development applications. So diterima development applications dan dia akan proses, dia akan submit kepada technical agencies, kepada LPA, local planning authority dan sebagainya. Dan dia akan chase, dia akan buat follow up. Dia akan monitor the progress of the applications. But they themselves, OSC, they do not approve, they do not reject, they do not decide on the development application. Dia cuma postman. Boleh cakap macam tu. Dia cuma postman. Yang mana is a place where you submit your development application, they will help to process the application. Bigger local authorities have a separate OSC unit from its planning department. While smaller local authorities may combine the OSC with the planning department. So it depends on the budget, the operations budget of the local authority. A bigger one akan ada bigger budget, boleh bayar lebih ramai staff. That's why they can afford to have separate OSC units from the planning department. Smaller ones, majlis perbandaran, majlis daerah yang kecil-kecil tu, normally they combine the OSC with planning department. Now, state authority states there under section 3 of TCPA, state authority is responsible for the general policy in respect of planning and use of all lands within local authority area. This particular provision, bertepatan is supported, dia bertepatan ataupun is dia align dengan our federal constitution. Yang mana we will see later on apa kuasa-kuasa yang diberikan kepada local authority, kepada state authority, apa kuasa-kuasa yang diberikan kepada federal authority, federal government di dalam dia punya state list, federal list, and apa kuasa yang dua-dua tu mesti jointly regulate atau jointly sit down and legislate. Dua-dua pihak tu kena kerjasama. Okay. In this case, planning and use of lands adalah diberi kuasa kepada state authority untuk dia membuat polisi, membuat dasar Okay, and okay, with that, with the power to give to come up with general policy in respect of planning and land use, dia boleh even give directions to state planning committee, local planning authority. The state authority ada kuasa untuk memberi direction, untuk memberi arahan kepada planners di peringkat negeri, planners di peringkat local level, di peringkat local. Okay. Now, before I go on, I want us to just take a while and think about this state authority. Siapa yang dimaksudkan? We always say state authority, but who exactly or what exactly is state authority? State authority comprises state excos. EXCO, EXCO kan selalu dengar EXCO kerajaan negeri, EXCO kerajaan negeri. EXCO is short form for Executive Committee. Mereka yang menjalankan, dia ada kuasa eksekutif lah. Executive Committee untuk certain portfolios, for instance perumahan, for instance pelancongan, for instance perindustrian, and so on so forth lah. So all these state excos, executive committees tu, will be led by the chief minister. So essentially state authority equals state excos, sebab dia ramai kan, portfolio tu banyak, who are being led or being chaired. The chairman dia adalah chief minister. So siapa yang ada kuasa, betul-betul ada kuasa, is the chief minister. Yang betul-betul ada kuasa, because chief minister tu adalah chairman ataupun adalah orang yang mengetuai exco negeri, tetapi dibantulah, dia punya keputusan tu dibantu, tapi ultimately the power lies with the chief minister, sebab dia boleh bagi direction sebenarnya kepada exco dia. Exco bagi nasihat kepada dia. Now, state authority can influence housing development by imposing. Macam mana state authority can influence housing development? By imposing express conditions, by imposing restrictions in interest where in the land title. Again, go back to what you learned before. Land is under state kan? Under the federal constitution, land is under state. So with that, the state authority boleh masukkan express conditions, boleh masukkan restriction in interest in the land title. So the power of state authority is very big, is very vast, significant. Next one is technical agent. No, go back. Express conditions. So express condition meaning that the state authority boleh control lah jenis penggunaan tanah. Okay, just now kategorinya bangunan. Express condition, bangunan, kediaman. Tanah ini hendaklah didirikan dengan bangunan dalam masa 2 tahun. So the state authority not only can control the use of the land, but also the period of the development, the development period or the tempo. Tempo tu dia punya, what do you call it, the speed, the speed of development. Dia kata dalam masa 2 tahun, so mesti bina. So must be built within 2 years lah. Restriction in interest, who can you sell your land to? Who can you sell your property to? Ataupun before you can sell, you must obtain the written approval from the state authority. That is restriction in interest. Ataupun tanah orang Melayu, Malay Reserve. So those kind of things under state. Now, what about technical agencies? Now, technical agencies, regardless, it says there, regardless of the size of the proposed housing development, corresponding changes in the local, social, economic, and physical environment can be anticipated. Now, any housing development, doesn't matter how small or how big, tu of course lah ada changes in the social side, in the economy side, in the physical side, ada dia punya change. Smaller ones pun ada. Because smaller housing developments, if you accumulate 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, lama-lama jadi 100 unit lah kan. So regardless of the size of the proposed housing development, it says there, eventually akan ada perubahan, eventually there will be changes or there will be impact on the socio-economy, on the physical environment. Socio-economy, for instance, if the area is becoming more populated dengan more housing units, more houses being built there, apa akan jadi? More congestion, more crimes there, ada snatch thieves dan sebagainya, snatch thefts dan sebagainya. More people living there, more crowded, more violence, for instance, kan. Violence boleh terjadi kat kawasan tu. Physically, tadi cakap more congestion, more vehicles coming to the area, kan. Now each household not only has one car, normally 2 cars, sometimes 2 cars plus 1 motorcycle, kan. So banyak vehicles. Apa jadi kat situ? Pollution. Apa jadi lagi kat situ? Noise pollution, smoke pollution dan sebagainya. So you can anticipate those kinds of changes. And to address the possible impacts, the proposed development project require inputs from technical agencies. Ini bukan ke mengingatkan you. Doesn't this remind you to last week's lecture, the EIA one, kan, to address possible impacts, potential impacts, kan, EIA. Certain housing developments require EIA. So housing developments above 50 hectares require EIA, wajib mesti ada EIA. Mesti dibuat EIA dulu to predict what kind of impacts on the environment and also to propose mitigation measures to these anticipated impacts on the environment. Okay, now coming back to this lecture, okay, to address the possible impacts above to the social economy and physical environment, okay, proposed development project require inputs from technical agencies. For instance, more and more housing di situ boleh mengakibatkan drainage punya system being overwhelmed. Mungkin boleh terjadi flash floods, kan. So DID, Jabatan Pengairan Saliran, akan give their inputs. Apa akan jadi kalau kita approve a new housing development comprising 200 units. So apa impact dia kepada pengaliran, pada saliran, pada longkang tu, sistem longkang. Cukup ke tak cukup? JKR nanti, kalau tambah lagi 1000 low cost units itu, apa akibat kepada prasarana, kepada infrastruktur, kepada jalan, kepada lampu dan sebagainya. All these inputs you obtain from technical agencies. So what kind of technical agencies are we talking about? These are various departments at local authority, the storage department in the water tu, storage department, DID, Department of Irrigation and Drainage, Jabatan Pengairan Saliran itu untuk peparitan lah, untuk anticipate boleh berlaku tak flash flooding and so on. Storage cukup ke dia punya treatment plant to accommodate the new population, for instance, ataupun other departments I mentioned earlier. You know, nowadays we have the Kementerian Multimedia dan KMM, kan. So anticipate cukup ke broadband di situ, cukup ke internet punya connectivity di situ. So they have to give their technical comments to the proposed development. So if there's any significant ataupun any major punya issue, that can be included as the condition to the to be included for the approval of that particular housing development. So mesti mematuhi syarat ini. Contohnya tak cukup parit, kan. So the developer must build additional 10% or 20%, okay, ataupun kedalamannya macam ni, okay. They can set or they can specify the drainage that is required for that particular proposed development. Next one is the process, as we said before, okay. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to explain this, the housing development process. The detailed housing development process can be divided into 3 stages: the initial stage, the plan preparation and approval stage, and also construction and disposal stage. The first one, initial stage, is about finding the site ataupun identifying a suitable site. Okay. Developer begins by identifying suitable site for major developers yang pernah menjadi pernah ada involved in plantations, whether rubber plantations ataupun oil palm estates, kan, oil palm plantations, they have their land banks in the forms of those estates. Estate tu mungkin dulu sesuai lah jadikan estate, but with impending development, development sudah creep, sudah datang ke kawasan itu, mungkin dah tak sesuai lagi untuk still being used as agricultural land, estate land. So the highest and best use is no longer agriculture, bukan no longer as rubber plantation, no longer oil palm estate. So now could be township, could be housing schemes kan. Okay, so these particular developers, okay, they have their own land banks, kita panggil land banks. Dia ada simpanan tanah dia sendiri, land banks. Which land banks tu dalam bentuk dia punya tanah lah, former rubber and oil palm estates. Now, so no problem for the major developers, but some other developers, they do not have the land banks. And it's very hard to find large tracts of private land. Tanah beri milik yang besar, 100 acres, 200 acres, 150 acres, 50 acres pun very hard to find. Okay, therefore, apa yang jadi ialah state land masih ada. State land masih ada dalam bentuk nak hutan lah, dalam bentuk state land yang tak dibangun, yang tak diberi milik lagi. Okay? So developers yang ada capital tapi tak ada tanah, they may approach the state authority and they propose a PPP, a private public partnership ataupun a public private partnership, tak kisahlah, whichever comes first. So it's a partnership between the private sector and the public sector. Private sector, the developer, private sector, public sector is the state authority. State authority, you have the land, I'm the developer, I have the capital, I have the money, I have the labor, I have the labor, money, entrepreneurship, I have the skills. Okay, so we work together, we become partners. You give me state land, I will develop the land. We will then divide the profits ataupun I will give you a certain percentage of completed units. So the terms tu, conditions and arrangements vary. Dia akan lain. Dia akan each PPP will be different from another PPP because no two lands are the same kan, no two properties are the same, so they have to negotiate lah, berapa persen, 30% profit ke, 20% profit ke, or 20% of the completed units ke, and so on so forth, as agreed by both parties. PPP pun is a contract juga, is an agreement between two parties, which is the private sector developer and also the state authority. So in a housing PPP, now PPP boleh jadi banyak, many kinds of PPP. Can be, but in this particular lecture, we are talking about a housing PPP. Housing PPP entails the state authority. Apa yang dibuat adalah state authority bagi tanah, private developer do the development. They do the plans approval, they do the design, they do the marketing, they do the selling, they do the, kalau katakan strata, they do the management first before MC is formed ataupun JMB is formed and so on. Okay. Now, other types of PPPs ada. In Kedah, PPP tu state bagi tanah, the private developer comes in and build the station bus. Alok start, apa nama dia? Orang Kedah tahu ni. So apa nama tah? So not just the bus station, but also what do you call it? Ya Allah, retail units together with the bus station. So that kind of PPP can be worked out as well. Stage 2 is the plan preparation and approval stage. Plan preparation, approval. Plan apa? We just learned that before. There are many types of plans. The LCP especially for planning permission. Okay. This stage starts with the developer preparing a preliminary plan for approval in principle from local planning authority. So there are two types of approvals that must be obtained. Satu tu approval in principle dari segi planning. I'm not talking about planning punya side. Ini tak termasuk lagi building plan, earthworks plan and also land matters. Ini just planning saja. Planning permission. So before getting the full planning permission, approval in principle, kelulusan dasar must be obtained from local authority. So how to do, what kind of kelulusan dasar, what kind of approval in principle, approval in land use change, proposed population density, type of development. So yang mana they propose and kalau tak agree can meet again for negotiation ataupun untuk dapatkan advice, untuk dapatkan nasihat perancangan daripada LPA, Local Planning Authority, to make sure that they comply with the requirements in the local plan. Apa local plan tu? Project untuk kawasan itu. Apa local plan tu? Project in terms of number of population in how many years time, ataupun the kind of developments that they want to see. Contohnya they want to see light industry, untuk bagi employment punya opportunities kepada local population, for instance. So kena pergi and approach the local planning authority, sit down with them, look at the local plan, and negotiate apa yang boleh dibina. Contohnya, maybe local planning authority kata for a certain size of housing development, you must prepare or you must provide rumah ibadat. In this case, must provide a mosque. Kan? Mosque tu akan contoh saja ni, contoh akan di akan costing kan, akan melibatkan cost. So mungkin negotiate, kata sudah ada mosque next door ataupun next nearby, sudah ada masjid kerajaan, okay, yang boleh menampung the population of the new housing scheme. Why not we build a playground, smaller one, nanti nak buat shop house juga, whatever lah, they have to negotiate with the local planning authority. So after obtaining the approval in principle, sudah habis negotiate, sudah dapat kelulusan dasar, next step will be to get the full permission, which is the planning permission. So after getting the approval in principle, a professional consultant will prepare the development proposal report, the LCP, containing the layout plan, building plan, infra plan, landscape plan, etc. Semuanya, semua plans to obtain the development order. Now, I have to explain this. Development order is planning permission in KL, in wilayah. Okay, it's the same thing. Development order, okay, sama dengan planning permission, okay, but the terms are different. In other states in Malaysia, we use the term planning permission, but in KL, planning permission, the term tu is being replaced by development order. Maksudnya sama, kebenaran merancang. Now, so here is the table of the required approvals before you can proceed with your housing proposed housing development. Okay, first of all, you have to settle land matters. Remember the stage 1 just now, untuk dapatkan suitable sites, whereby mungkin ada 4 small parcels of land, you need to amalgamate, or you have a big parcel of agri land, you need to convert, or you need to do simultaneous conversion and subdivision, kan? So all these land matters have to be settled first. The element is known as land matters. Sama ada nak buat conversion, you want to do subdivision, you want to do, in some cases mungkin nak buat partitioning, okay, maybe nak buat simultaneous conversion and subdivision, maybe you want to do surrender and re-alienation. So whatever that is required in your development, you want to settle that, and that is known as land matters. The second development element is the planning permission, or in KL, development order. Okay, the planning permission is being regulated by Town and Country Planning Act 1976, Act 172. Building plan also must be the approval of building plan also must be obtained, and the act, akta yang kawal the approval of building plan is SDBA, Streets Drainage and Building Act 1974, Act 133, and Uniform Building Bylaws 1984. Now, finally is the earthworks plan and road and drainage plans. Ini bila dah nak start, bila dah dapat planning permission, dah dapat building plan approval, dah dapat land matters punya approval, you want to start work on the site, you must obtain earthworks plan. You nak buat filling, you nak buat hill cutting, you nak buat leveling dan sebagainya. Road and drainage plans, tu semua mesti dapat kelulusan. So, being this development element, okay, is being controlled under or by the SDBA, Streets Drainage and Building Act 1974. Importance, kenapa perlu adanya dokumentasi yang lengkap dan patuh, yang mematuhi semua kehendak. Kenapa? Why? It is crucial for developers to submit documents that are complete and fulfill all criteria prescribed in development plans. Dia mesti lengkap. Kalau dia minta 15 copies, then 15 copies. Kalau minta sediakan moss, then you sediakan moss. Kalau minta colourkan certain areas in yellow, certain areas tu must be yellow. Zoning colour apa kan, orange for instance for housing, so you must follow exactly lah the criteria. Incomplete documents can be rejected at the onset. Kalau tak cukup tadi bilangan, diminta 15 copies but you only submit 14 copies, go back, prepare another copy. Ataupun tak cukup satu building plan, satu copy je, lain dokumen cukup, go back, prepare another set of building plan. Can be rejected at the onset, maknanya di depan, di mula-mula sekali, at the counter of the OSC. Dia ada checklist dia, tak cukup bilangan ni, you go back, you sediakan, cukupkan bilangan. Dia tak tengok, tak semak lagi yang isi dalam. The contents are not being vetted yet, it's only the number of documents. Then okay, if the number of documents are there, then it will go through a second vetting, a second checking lah. Tengok dalam tu, tak cukup, salah, dia punya colouring tadi salah, dia punya terms salah ke whatever, atau tak memenuhi syarat kan, then rejected bila dah sampai in the review punya proses. What can they cause? They can cause delays. Lambat. Itu yang tadi dia dah promise the house purchaser 24 months bila dah sign kan. Inilah, all these things can contribute to the delays. Yeah. Now, the third stage would be the construction stage, whereby states there, apa yang I dah mention a few times before this, landed properties, contohnya terrace, semi-D, detached houses must be completed within 24 months of sale and purchase execution. While strata properties termasuklah flats, apartments, must be completed within 36 months. Okay, from the signing of the sale and purchase agreement. But having said that, later on you will see what is the effective date. Adakah tarikh you sign the sale and purchase agreement, or kalau you bayar dulu, katakan you bayar sedikit deposit, then only you sign. Sebenarnya tarikh you bayar tu is when the clock starts ticking against the developer. So it's quite important. Dah ada 2 court case yang mengatakan it's not the signing of the document, the sale and purchase agreement, it's the payment of the deposit. Kalau orang tu bayar deposit awal, katakan awal sebulan, then the 24 months to start from the month before, from the date when the payment was made, bukan when the SMP was signed. Now, during the construction stage, okay, the principal submitting person, PSP just now, the architect or the engineer or the draftsman will certify 21 stages of construction. Okay, this we will learn later on under building law, but the CCC will only be issued, the form F though, F will only be issued once all the form G, 21 form Gs have been submitted to the PSP. Maknanya bila forms tu dah submitted, dia certify sudah siap lah 21 stages of construction. Then only the building is certified complete and complying, sudah comply dengan all the regulatory requirements. Okay, this certification system is known as CCC. Now, we come to the legal framework over housing development. The government and legal structure, hopefully everybody knows this already. At the apex, at the top of the pyramid, ialah the Constitution of Malaysia, the Federal Constitution, which controls everything, all the federal laws, all the state punya laws, and dekat local authority, dia ada dia punya own bylaws. Okay. Now, this is the hierarchy. Kita panggil hierarchy from the federal until the local authority, yang mana state is at the middle. Okay, we begin with the top, which is the Constitution of Malaysia. As I said earlier, it will control everything beneath. Semua tu mesti follow all the provisions, all the pasal di dalam perlembagaan persekutuan. Now, so we have the Federal Acts yang diluluskan oleh Parlimen, semua akta-akta tu, termasuklah dia punya regulations at the back of the akta, tu at the federal level. Regulations and other subsidiary legislation yang katanya tadi, yang I kata tadi, diletakkan di bawah akta tu. At the state level, you have the state enactment, state ordinance dan sebagainya. For instance, Sarawak punya land law is Sarawak Land Code. kan. In Sabah is the Sabah Land Ordinance namanya. So itulah, setiap negeri ada dia punya own state legislation. Local regulations dia ada bylaws sendiri. KL especially ada banyak bylaws di KL yang being implemented ataupun enforced by di BKL. Okay. Then ada guidelines, guidebooks and government circulars. Yang bawah ni paling tak banyak, paling kurang dia punya statutory power. Dia punya legal authority dia sangat lemah. Guidelines, guidebook, government circulars ada sedikit legal effect, but kalau di-challenge oleh state ataupun federal law, habislah. Cannot win against the state or federal law. Okay. Land and local authority are placed under state authority under the federal constitution. Town planning and housing fall under the joint authority of the state and federal governments. If we state this according to the state list, federal list, concurrent list, state and local authority is under the state list. Town planning and housing is in the concurrent list. Itu maksud dia. Now, town planning you cannot do without land. Housing you cannot build without land. So itu sudah ada satu macam not contradiction, satu complexity lah, satu kesusahan di situ. Kalau you kata land and local authority are under state authority. Town planning, housing you buat pula joint. It's under both state and federal governments. At the end of the day, since land is under state authority, that means that town planning and housing, dia punya authority falls banyak kepada state punya side rather than the government, than the federal government punya side. So, although the federal government has come up with the national housing policy, the latest 2018 tu, dia tak boleh simply nak implement the national housing policy. National housing policy cuma boleh diberikan as a guidance kepada state authority, because at the end of the day, land is a state matter. Okay. So again, I repeat my point above just now, the state authorities dominance, dia punya kekuasaan, dominance over land development at the state level is guaranteed through its control over land and the state and the local authority. So this summarizes my points just now. Land is item 2 under state list, local authority item 4 under state list, town planning item 5 under concurrent list, housing and also provisions for housing item 9C of concurrent list. Now we come to this extra point lah on low cost housing quota. Okay, Federal Constitution and National Land Codes enables the state authority to impose condition in the land title for state authorities written endorsement for proposed development. So ada kuasa kepada state authority untuk letakkan conditions dalam land title, termasuklah quota. Okay, this requirement is implemented alongside planning procedures. Low cost housing quota can be imposed as condition untuk meluluskan that particular housing development, whereby the low cost housing quota it differs. Dia bukan 30%. We always hear 30% quota rumah kos rendah. But nowadays it's quite rare to find low cost housing quota. Dia sudah ada affordable housing quota. Selalunya ada certain percentage of affordable housing quota rather than low cost housing quota. But anyway, it's not 30%. Dia ada range because some states can afford to put or to impose higher percentage, 40%. Some states they want the housing units, they kata tak boleh lah kita impose on the developers. Developers in this state are small scale developers, they cannot survive if we impose on them 30%. So we impose on them 25%. Boleh dibuat juga. So the range is 25 to 40%. Any appeal by the developer regarding low cost housing quota is made to the state authority. So the quota just now boleh dibuat satu appeal. Satu ni lah, appeal is what kita nak pohon kelonggaran, bukan penurunan lah. From say 30% kita minta turun kepada 25% dengan alasan developer projek itu tidak akan berdaya saing. The project will not be viable, will not be feasible if too high low cost housing quota, for instance. Okay, and the appeal is made to the state authority. Sell then build. What is the current housing delivery system yang kita mention just now? Sell then build. The private housing delivery is sell then build system. It entails, dia melibatkan yang mana the developer and house buyer entering into agreement and the buyer paying deposit 10%. The bank releases progress payment. The 90% tu akan di-release bit by bit by bit, mengikut progress. Okay, staggered. Mengikut certified completed work. The certification is done by QS. The developer has to deliver the unit within the stipulated time, 24 months for landed, 36 months for strata. The buyer can make a complaint sekiranya completed unit is delivered late or not up to specifications. First of all, kalau tak up to standards, tak up to specification, can complain developer. Developer tak ambil peduli, you can go and claim at the tribunal. Tak ambil peduli, tak menang juga, can claim at court. Ataupun the tribunals punya limit is 50,000. So anything above 50,000 tak boleh claim di tribunal. So what you do is you go to high court and make the claim there. Saman lah sebenarnya. Issues, some issues in Housing Development Act according to Chagamas a long time ago, 8 years ago, ya. Enforcement dan juga developers attitude. Enforcement is so lacking katanya. Sangat lemah lah. Not so lacking, dia lemah. There is reluctance to fully penalize errant developers. Kalau kita letakkan fine yang terlalu tinggi, developers tu akan bankrupt. What happens to the remainder? Apa jadi kepada projek yang lain? Akan abandon juga ke? That will not be good. Okay. So maknanya in some cases walaupun the developers did something wrong, ada satu prevention bagi pihak berkuasa tu untuk ambil tindakan yang keras. So they took on a lenient punya approach to these developers to penalize the developers. Also a problem is developers attitude. Dia punya tingkah laku, dia punya tindakan tu, tingkah laku. Case convictions normally involve fines. Kalau dah kena denda, bayar sahaja. Whereby they can avoid imprisonment, jail sentence. And also kalau kata perundangan tak berkesan, HDA is not effective enough, what can be done? They can take the market approach. We hurt the developer in a way that can hurt that is not from legal punya perspektif, tetapi market punya perspektif, which is kita cuba tarik, we pull away house buyers from them. Kita blacklist these developers. Once blacklisted, okay, hopefully the house buyers will stay away from this these housing developers. Housing developers, kalau tak ada buyer apa jadi? Rugilah kan. So they will try their best to behave lah. Kalau tak nanti they will be blacklisted. So that's all the lecture, and this is the main reference. Okay, have a look later on. You can find these items. I think can go online and find. If not, you can request from me if you are interested to know more. Yeah. Okay, so that's all from me. Happy studying, and that's all. Bye-bye.